Have you ever just stopped and wondered what the characters from Gumball might end up like in the future? Just imagine all of the ridiculous choices they've made over the years, stacking up and shaping how they'll eventually end up. So today, we're gonna have a little fun and speculate about what the future might look like for some of the most popular characters in the show. Starting off with all of the characters that we've seen future versions of, the first one being Gumball. Now, in the episode The Trumpet, we would see a few different scenarios of Gumball in the future, starting off with the one that is most likely that's coming true, which is how Gumball is gonna become a good-for-nothing bum, who sits on the couch all day, watches TV with toe fungus, along with him investing his whole college fund into crypto and getting his license revoked. And due to Gumball being like this, the whole house needs to be torched.
Yo, Mom, I got my license revoked, I invested my college funds in crypto, and I skipped bail.
Found patient zero. Torch it!
Now honestly, the writers of Gumball most likely made this scene happen on purpose, as even they know how likely the possibility is, as Gumball is the second laziest person in the Watterson family besides Richard, and lacks any self-care. So honestly, nobody would be surprised if Gumball ended up like this. And due to Nicole and everyone else thinking this, she decided to buy Gumball a trumpet, and Gumball clearly doesn't know how to play it, but Nicole would lie to him and say that he's good at it for the sake of him actually locking in. Which leads us to the next future scenario for Gumball, which is that he would somehow become a successful musician and somehow obtain a British accent. Anyways, in this future scenario, Gumball would be rich and have some random wife that isn't Penny.
Hello, Mother. Back from tour. This is my wife, Princess of somewhere or other. I've parked my yacht outside. You've really let this place go, Mom. It's a mess, but not to worry. I've ordered a cleaning crew.
All right, torch it!
Now obviously, this scenario was just solely for the episode, and honestly has a really low chance of happening. However, something that could happen, which is how Gumball would actually lock in and be able to get a decent job in the future, and still have a strong relationship with Penny, and eventually start a family, is this scenario right here.
Hey, Gumball, this is your brain. Enjoying the most beautiful day of your life? Well, do you remember when...
Say hello to Daddy.
Hey, Gumball, feeling happy? Well, do you remember when...
Clearly, Gumball is going to have quite the tragic outcome for the future, but Darwin, on the other hand, has way better odds for success. Now, as we all know, Darwin is obviously Gumball's adoptive brother and best friend. However, when it comes to his knowledge, he's a bit on the smarter side, as he usually thinks smarter and tries to do the right thing whenever Gumball wants to do some mischievous activities. Therefore, Darwin having this knowledge is actually really good for him, and he can get a really good future. One scenario of Darwin's potential future yet again is seen in The Trumpet, where we see Darwin trying to build a cool city toy, and due to him building this pretty hard toy, Nicole pictures him being a successful architect in the future, and overall having a wealthy life.
Thank you for everything you've done, Mrs. Mom. I'm off to live my successful architecture/philanthropic life now.
Clearly, this is a high possibility, but again, we've never really seen Darwin do architect sort of activities besides in this episode, so we really don't know what his career goal is. But again, the writers definitely did this for a reason. But now, let's cover Darwin's potential family life. As we all know, Darwin and Carrie are a really successful couple. However, Carrie is a literal ghost, so obviously they can't have kids, so there's definitely a possibility that in the future, Carrie and Darwin could adopt children of their own and live happily ever after. So yeah, Darwin is for sure gonna have a pretty normal and happy future. However, someone who will come out a tad bit more successful is none other than his little sister Anais. Now Anais's future isn't too hard to determine, as Anais is insanely smart. Not to mention, she's only 4 years old in the 8th grade. Now realistically, a 4-year-old in the 8th grade is actually full-on genius, which already helps set up Anais for big success, with one of her possible future career goals being a scientist or astronaut, as seen in The Trumpet.
You've been such an inspiration to me, Mom. Thank you.
Now honestly, this career is highly possible, as Anais is very scientific at times, and even makes some crazy inventions, such as in the gut, where Anais invents a device that will allow people to talk to Richard's gut, which is honestly just crazy.
Go on, honey. What were you saying? Well, basically this device can give organic matter the ability to intelligently...
Sorry, what was that?
Forget it. I'll just show you.
Water me, or give me death.
Truly horrifying.
Now, clearly, Anais's big career is already looking up to be great, but let's talk a bit more about Anais's age and how big of an impact her knowledge is at this age. Obviously, Anais is basically still a toddler, yet has Einstein-level knowledge in the 8th grade. So if we really think about it, Anais will end up graduating high school before she's even a teenager. And of course, after high school comes college. And just imagine Anais in college as a preteen. The opportunities for her are basically endless, along with the fact that she will be very easily able to obtain a really good job while in college to make some extra money, thanks to her amazing knowledge. So overall, Anais is easily the Watterson that will change the outlook of her family forever, and honestly, be the most successful Watterson ever. But now finally, we've came to the last Watterson, which we've seen a future version of. Well, sort of. And that's none other than Nicole. We would yet again see Nicole appear in the trumpet, and she would appear relatively older. And by the looks of it, Nicole may have either retired by this point or stepped down working at the Rainbow Factory. We know this because we can notice that Nicole is no longer wearing the Rainbow Factory badge that she's usually wearing in every episode. However, the more likely option is that she's retired, as she looks significantly old in this episode. But thankfully, when it comes to her kids, the future will most likely be different for her, as she will definitely be less stressed out and have less responsibilities due to at least 2 out of the 3 Watterson kids having successful jobs or being moved out. So due to this, Nicole's future definitely sounds like it's going to be basic, but a peaceful time. But there's no better time than now than to talk about Nicole's husband, Richard. So from here on out, all of these entries will be theories. So let's start with Richard. Now, as we all know by now, Richard is very lazy and can easily be passed as a bum. Now, due to this one single character trait about Richard, his future honestly isn't too hard to predict at all, which is good as we can visualize it more. Let's start with Richard's physique in the future. Now, throughout the whole series, we've never canonically seen Richard permanently gain weight, but if we're talking realistically, Richard will most likely be way fatter than he is now if he keeps doing his same eating habits, which the habits aren't anything good.
What diet is this?
Well, that's the no-carbs diet, that's the high-protein diet, that's the 5-2 diet, that's the 2-5 diet, that's the... Pizza delivery!
So yeah, it's safe to say that Richard will 100% get a worse physique in the coming years, and it might honestly start affecting his health, so my boy has to lock in. But now, let's talk about what he'll potentially do on a daily basis, as he usually just rots on the couch and watches TV, not having a job. And in the future, it'll most likely be the same scenario, as Nicole doesn't even let Richard get a job even if he wanted to. We see this in the episode The Job, where Richard becomes a pizza delivery man. However, since Richard getting a job was so uncommon, it caused the whole world to warp and glitch out. So due to this, there are high odds that Richard won't be getting any sort of career in the future. However, of course, there's a scenario sprinkled in where Richard somehow locks in and actually loses the weight for good, and proves to Nicole that getting a job won't alter the whole universe. So she actually lets Richard get a job and stops being a bum. However, that most likely won't end up happening because it's Richard we're talking about at the end of the day. But Larry, on the other hand, is way more interesting than Richard when it comes to his future. This is due to the fact that Larry basically works all of the jobs in Elmore besides the teachers. And this insane talent that Larry has really sparks the question on what his future will really look like. Now, let's first go ahead to think about what route that is most likely, which is that Larry will keep working every job until he dies. This theory is most likely because Larry really can't quit any of his jobs, as if he does, Elmore essentially ends. We saw this in the episode The Pizza, where we see the Wattersons complain to Larry about their pizza. However, this one complaint is the last straw for Larry, and he would end up quitting all of his jobs. And due to this, Elmore would go into an apocalyptic-like state, as nothing had employees of any sort. Therefore, all businesses shut down.
I am no longer Principal Brown. I am the Eagle of the Road!
So yeah, Elmore is clearly gonna end if Larry were to retire, as probably no one else can do what Larry does. So the unfortunate reality for Larry is that he'll have to keep working no matter what until he's no longer chosen to work. And honestly, this whole theory would make a really good episode for the show. However, maybe someone else tries to take Larry's place and save Elmore, but fails miserably. So Gumball writers, if you're watching this, please try to make something like this happen. I like how the episode gives Larry respect, but another person who definitely hates the Watersons is Miss Simian, and her whole character is interesting, which is why she's gonna be in this video. Now, as we all know, Miss Simian is a baboon who's been teaching at Elmore for millions of years, and the weird part about this is that an average baboon's lifespan is only 35 to 45 years, when Miss Simian is thousands of years old, and she claims that she taught back in the Stone Ages. So this fact really raises the question on Miss Simian's future. Will she die? Will she quit teaching? Will she get fired? Well, the most likely option out of all of this is that she ends up getting fired in the future. Now, as we all know, Miss Simian can be a really shady person when it comes to getting the Watersons in trouble or getting stuff from them, such as in The 8, where we literally see Miss Simian become friends with Gumball and Darwin just so they can write a good teacher letter to her so she can get the favorite teacher award.
We, the aforementioned, unanimously agree that Miss Simian is worthy of this year's favorite teacher award.
Favorite teacher award. Okay, done it.
It's mine.
Yeah, this is clearly messed up. However, unfortunately, every time she does some shady scandal like this, she's always somehow able to get away with it with Principal Brown, as they are in a relationship, of course. Which actually brings us to the next part of this theory, which is Miss Simian and Principal Brown's relationship. Now, throughout the show, this relationship has been relatively healthy. However, we've seen Miss Simian act weird at times, such as in the Inquisition, where she literally hits on the new superintendent.
What do you mean we can't see each other anymore?
I'm sorry, Nigel. It's just not professional for two members of staff to be in a relationship.
Simian, I'm cutting your pay in half.
What? Why?
For being half asleep on the job.
So obviously, acts like these are huge red flags, which definitely raises the odd of Miss Simian and Principal Brown potentially breaking up in the future, which would most likely be the only way that Miss Simian actually gets fired. Now, that right there was pretty hard to make a theory about. However, it's Miss Simian at the end of the day, so she's really unpredictable. But now, let's move on to a fan favorite character, which of course is Penny. Now, as we all know, Penny is overall a pretty normal and innocent girl, who most likely has a bright future ahead of her. This is shown in the shell, as we get to see her crack out of her shell and finally show her true self, as she didn't want to keep hiding her real personality, which just goes to show how she is as a person.
Here we go! I'm gonna be myself! What? You look...
With this taken into consideration, we can definitely assume that Penny will land a good career due to her mentality. But let's mainly cover her future relationship with Gumball. Now, throughout the series, Gumball and Penny have never officially broken up, which is really good as it shows that they're lovers. However, let's take a small flashback to earlier when I explained the theory of how Gumball may become a lazy bum. The reason why I'm going back to this is due to the fact that if Gumball took this route, Penny would most definitely break up with him, as from what we've seen so far, Penny does not like lazy people. A good example of this is in The Mess, where Penny assigns Gumball to babysit Polly. However, the night before, him and Darwin stayed up all night, which caused many bad events to happen, and due to this, Penny was mad.
Like, you related?
Polly, say goodbye and get your stuff. Goodbye, kids.
What happened? Nothing! Why would you say that? Okay, we lost her.
This one example shows that Penny wants trust and responsibility in the relationship, and Gumball clearly can't provide this at times, so bro might need to start locking in before things get worse. But while this theory is likely, there's also a theory where Gumball doesn't fall off, and he and Penny stay together and start a family, as we saw in the flashback during the cringe. And like I've said already, the Gumball writers do all of these things for a reason, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. Well, Penny's scenario heroes were definitely interesting. However, a character who's probably had the most character development in the series can't be left out, and that character is Rob. Now, Rob has been one of the only characters in Gumball to have plenty of canon character development, and the fun part about this is that we are bound to see more. Let's start with the most recent character development that we've seen from Rob, which is in the finale of Season 8, The Rewrite. In this episode, we finally get the Inquisition cliffhanger solved after 6 years, and the episode consists of a bunch of fourth wall breaks, along with a lot of flashbacks. However, at the end of the episode, we see Rob and the Awesome Store guy land back in the void after a whole rewrite in the script. And during the scene, the original Awesome Store dude retires and leaves the position to Rob, yet again letting him escape the void.
But how? I've added a post-credit scene. There, new uniform. Training is over. I make good money from these fools selling them weird stuff. They will need someone to protect them when they eventually get pulled from the air.
Now, this ending was super significant to Rob's storyline, as this theory is about to get good. If you didn't already notice, Rob would ask the Awesome Store guy for advice whenever the void comes back for him, and the Awesome Store guy shows him an upload button, which prevents him from staying in the void. And this one key fact shows that Rob will physically never be able to get stuck in the void again, unless something were to happen to the Awesome Store van, which is always a big possibility. And honestly, if we ever got a Gumball season finale, this episode would be an amazing fit to maybe be the official Gumball finale to close out the series, or simply one of the episodes in the season. Well, those were the most popular Gumball characters' future scenarios. Make sure to drop a comment down below with your own theories. I'd love to read them all. And while you're down there, you might as well subscribe. And if you're still here, click the video on screen. I'm sure you'll love it.